We're going to call to order the Monday, May 10th, 2021 Parks, Recreation, and Natural Resource Commission meeting. Roll call. Approval of the agenda. Everybody get a chance to review. Is there any comments? If not, do I have a motion to accept the agenda?
I'll make a motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Approval of the minutes of March 8th. Again, everybody get a chance to review. Any comments, corrections? If not, do I have a motion to accept?
Motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. The next item is open forum. And what we're going to do is ask people if you have anything that's not on the agenda and you wish to speak, now is the time. If you've signed up to speak on agenda items, please wait your turn.
Where is the agenda?
Do we have an agenda for the public?
Probably not. If you're speaking on Mississippi Dunes, that's the item most people are here for. That item is coming up under 7B, or 7A, I'm sorry.
All right, so if we have no other speakers for open forum, we'll move on to presentations. COVID-19 update.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Not a lot of updates this month. Obviously, the governor's orders have changed quite a bit, so we'll be adapting our programs and events and facilities to adapt to those new guidelines, updating our preparedness plans as needed, but I think after May 28th, the preparedness plans go away as well, and following mask mandates as those numbers and data comes back. So otherwise, no real updates beyond that.
Thank you. Item B, Friends of the Mississippi River.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. Tonight we have the Friends of the Mississippi River, who has been a good partner for the city of Cottage Grove on many habitat restoration projects and protecting lands down by the Mississippi River. So we've invited them to speak to the commission tonight, tell us a little bit about their program and what they do. So tonight we have Lisa and Colleen, who will go to the podium and tell us about Friends of the Mississippi River.
Good evening. I'm Colleen O'Connor-Toberman, the River Corridor Director at Friends of the Mississippi River. This is Lisa. You'll hear from her in a moment. It's a real pleasure to be here with you tonight. Just going to share updates about a few things going on in Cottage Grove that might be of interest to the Commission and to residents related to parks and the environment. So first, I'm going to speak to, see if I can figure out how this.
You'll have to scroll it down.
There we go. Got it. To a new upcoming city ordinance coming up later this year called the Mississippi River Corridor Critical Area. So this is something that the city will be taking up later this year that might be of particular interest to the commission. The Mississippi River Corridor Critical Area is a special designated area along the river, the Mississippi riverfront through the Twin Cities. It was established by the state in 1976, and then the National Park Service followed the same boundaries in 1988 when they established the Mississippi National River and Recreation Area, which is a national park. So it includes 25 cities and townships. And at the moment, each of those 25 cities and townships is in the process of updating their Mississippi River Corridor Critical Area, or MRCA ordinance, to meet some new state standards to provide more consistent management and development of the riverfront through the entire Twin Cities. There are some state minimum standards that every city has to adopt, but there are also some opportunities to exceed them should the city be interested, and I'll touch on those in a minute. So this is the Mississippi River Corridor Critical Area in Cottage Grove. It's all of those different colored boxes. Runs about a half mile to a mile off of the riverfront in most parts of the city and includes all of Gray Cloud Island as well. Those different colored boxes are different districts that have slightly different management standards, particularly related to building height and setback and things like that. The slide came out a little goofy, but the ordinance protects several things: open space, public access, scenic views, bluffs and shorelines, vegetation, wildlife habitat, water quality, historic and cultural resources through a variety of different requirements in the ordinance. As I mentioned, the state has minimum standards, and they're good, but there's also an opportunity for cities to go further if they want to, and so this might be of something that's interest to the commission to engage in when the planning staff and commission take the ordinance up. You might want to consider stronger open space protection standards in new developments, so a higher percentage of park dedication, for instance. Bluff and shoreline protections, particularly to protect scenic views. You know, if you think about the Gray Cloud area, how amazing it is to not see development there. You might want to consider increasing structure setbacks or requiring that a structure cannot get a variance or conditional use permit for both height and setback at the same time. We're encouraging all communities to consider bird-safe lighting standards. A simple way to do this would be to require downward shielded lighting in new development and maybe in public facilities like roads or parks. We're considering or encouraging everyone to adopt very clear, detailed criteria for variances and conditional use permits, so that if something were to come up that needed to be built outside of the standards, there's very clear consideration of the impacts to the river and the surrounding environment while that request is being considered. Last but not least, the DNR and the National Park Service provide really good technical assistance on these. They can be experts that are very valued advisors to cities, but they often don't hear about big projects far enough in advance to really weigh in, given their capacity. And so we encourage that any project that would require a public hearing has a required notification period of 30 days for the DNR and National Park Service, that there's more time for them and community members to take part in that consideration process. That's all I'm going to say, but there is a lot more on our website, fmr.org/river-rules. We have interactive maps, handouts, videos, lots of information about this ordinance with whatever level of detail you may like. And I am more than happy to take questions later or hear from you later as well. And with that, I'm going to pass it off to my colleague, Lisa.
Would you mind putting this in the center? Maybe sure. We'll do that. Well, hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here in person. It's been a long time. I don't know about you guys, but this is my first live public meeting in a very long time, so kind of fun, just like the old days. I'm Lisa Mueller. I'm the Conservation Director with FMR, and as Zach mentioned, we have had many opportunities to work cooperatively with the City of Cottage Grove Parks Department on a number of different restoration and management projects within city parks. The big map that you see here that Colleen is holding up shows all of the project areas that we work in throughout the MNRA corridor, which is a 72-mile stretch from roughly Ramsey, Minnesota to Hastings, Minnesota area. And within that project corridor, we have typically about 30 active projects, although we have been involved in as many as 45 restorations and ongoing management projects within the corridor. This photo, just for fun, is at Cottage Grove Ravine Park. It's a lakeshore restoration. So specifically in Cottage Grove, you can see these red blobs that are a little bit hard to make out, but in the upper left is the Camel's Hump Park. And just straight down 61, right close to here, is the Cottage Grove Ravine Regional Park, which is a nice, big, beautiful park. We also have done work and work cooperatively with the city at River Oaks Park. And then last but not least, Settlers Island Park, which is just the little tiny dot off to the left. Can you see it? Yeah. All right. So at Camel's Hump specifically, we have participated and been involved in the restoration of 60 acres of forest, woodland, savanna, and bluff prairie habitat. Those acres are either fully restored or in progress, and we help to host yearly public events at each of those places. At Settlers Island, we have been involved in restoring 3 acres of forest and wetland, and establishing a public canoe launch and picnic pad. It was installed there recently. And I think Colleen had the opportunity to be there just yesterday on Mother's Day.
Still looks great.
Gave it high marks. So we have yearly volunteer planting events also at Settlers Island. Cottage Grove Ravine, definitely a gem in your collection of beautiful parks. We have over 100 acres of oak forest restored or in process. The top photo, well, let's start at the bottom. So these photos got a little bit flipped around, but the bottom is before removal of buckthorn and beginning the restoration work, and the top photo is after the buckthorn has been cleared and native plants and shrubs have been planted in the understory. 5 acres of remnant prairie has been restored at Cottage Grove Ravine, and we have engaged over, sorry again for the formatting, but we have engaged over 150 volunteers in events at Cottage Grove Ravine since 2012. At River Oaks Park, a small but beautiful place directly overlooking the river, we've helped restore 2 acres of bluff prairie, woodland, and forest. And last but not least, we've been involved in the site planning and conversations with a number of conservation partners as far as the Mississippi Dunes property goes since the time the course closed in 2017. We have had the opportunity to review the park master plan that was provided to us by Zach, and we've prepared some written comments that I will distribute to you all as Colleen is sharing kind of a verbal summary of those. So with that, I'll turn it back to Colleen.
Would you like our comments on Mississippi Dunes now, or do you want to wait until that portion of the agenda?
Yeah, true.
Yeah, I don't know.
No?
Take care of it while we're here.
Sure.
Where did I set my binder? Right there. Well, thank you for the opportunity to speak on this as well. It's just really great to be here tonight talking about so many great places along the river. As Lisa mentioned, FMR has been very actively engaged in the future of the Mississippi Dunes area since 2017. We've worked with the city, the county, the DNR, several other stakeholders in a quest to help preserve as much of that site as possible, given its really, really unique habitat and terrific opportunity to be a really recreational destination for the city, which is 13 miles of riverfront, but not really good river access for residents. Throughout this long process in working with all these different parties, we actually have helped identify enough funds that we believe that a significant portion of the property, bigger than what's in the current master plans, could be purchased from the owners at fair market value and donated to the city as a public park. So there's an opportunity to have a much, much larger park than what is in the current plans that you'll see today. Most cities would be so excited to have an opportunity like this, to have an opportunity for more land, but it does require the city to actually actively pursue that vision. And instead, there appears to be a desire to put primarily housing development at the site instead. The housing development proposes having only one small strip of land along the river for public park, which isn't big enough to provide significant ecological value or wildlife habitat. It doesn't seem big enough to accommodate all of the recreational amenities that residents have said they'd like to see. And it's also not big enough to really serve as a destination park for the whole city. Instead, it seems destined to be more like a neighborhood park, serving a development that hasn't been built yet, and residents who may not even live in the city yet. But this doesn't have to be the final say. The city has a lot of leverage through the process that it would take to plan a development there. So comp plan amendment, rezoning, environmental assessment, plat approval, et cetera. And the city could use these processes to pursue a more significant park. And again, the current landowner can be fairly compensated for their property in this process. Housing that might be built around the edges of the property would have higher value for being closer to such a real gem of a park, and the current residents of Cottage Grove could have the kind of park that they've been asking for a long time. We have more comments in our letters. We're happy to, discuss any of those details further. If you want to approve any of these plans tonight, we encourage you to take a hard look at the community center portion. We want to make sure that, anything that is destined to serve the whole community is placed in an area that's accessible to the whole community and not serving as an amenity to just the residents of the development. But ultimately, we'd rather encourage a Parks Commission to reject all of the concepts tonight and make a clear statement supporting the bigger park that residents have been asking for. And with that, I thank you for the opportunity to comment.
Thank you. Any questions from the commission? Thank you for your presentation, the work you do.
Pull this out.
Okay, we will now move on to action items. Mississippi Dunes Master Plan. Now, before we get into this, we have a few comments from staff and Council Liaison Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. The Mississippi Dunes River Access Strategy Report was a study adopted by both the Parks Commission and the City Council at the end of 2020. And in that report, the former Mississippi Dunes Golf Course property ranked the highest in prioritization for access. The ability to acquire recreational property through future housing and infrastructure development, as well as the property's habitat and recreational values, is what scored at the highest. The planning of this property has to be really sensitive to future housing options, infrastructure, critical river corridor area, river access that the city has deemed as necessary, public river access, recreational opportunities, and then habitat preservation. So there's a lot of things that need to be balanced when we're talking about development of this property. There are lots of groups that need to coordinate together to ensure that the master plan fits with everyone's needs in mind. Those parties could include the property owner, the city, Cottage Grove residents, park neighbors, recreational visitors, future developers, the Minnesota DNR, and the list goes on. Because of the intricacy needed for this master planning process, the city hired ISG to do an independent consultant to lead the project. And included within your reports tonight was the initial draft master plan. There's 3 concepts for the commissioners to review, and we're looking for the commission to provide a recommendation to council on the preferred option. Now, when I say the preferred option, that could be you prefer one single option, but you also like pieces of the other options, so you can piece it together, and that's the recommendation that will go to council, and council will take final action. We have had, there was some debate with development potential. What comes first? It's the cart and the horse analogy of, do you master plan the park first, or do you wait for development to happen? And the city council seemed to be pretty adamant that this is a very important piece of property to them. So let's get what we want planned out, and have those discussions and plan that out, so that we can make good decisions and make recommendations to the property owner and future developers. So with that, I will turn it over to Councilman Olson to say a few words.
Thank you, Zach. Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the commission. Normally, I wouldn't speak, and I would just let you do your work, but I want to provide some context for you that you may not have as you consider what's in front of you this evening. You are the first stop on a very long journey. This piece of property, for those of you who have been around for a while in the city, is a very valuable piece of property. For years, it served as the Mississippi Dunes Golf Course, and then the owner fell into some financial difficulties. The property was ultimately up for sale to whoever might want to buy it through the procedure that the former owner went through. And the current owner, Mr. Gustafson, took the risk, both financial and legal, to purchase this property as an investment property. The city council has met with Mr. Gustafson on several occasions, as has city staff, to talk through what may become of this property. So there's some things that you're going to want to understand about the process that we're in the middle of. This property is currently zoned as a transitional use area, which means that it is not currently zoned for single-family housing or for multi-unit housing or for medium-density housing. Hence, it requires a significant amount of planning with regard to what this might ultimately become. The City Council feels very strongly that because the City of Cottage Grove is the community in the Twin Cities with the most river frontage without access, that we wanted to take a look at this property with regard to how we can create a park amenity that people both within our community and outside of our community would look at as a destination. That's why we're starting with you on the planning of this property. When you have a transitional use area, you can start with any number of pieces to the planning process. You could start with transportation planning if you felt that was the most important. You could start with infrastructure planning if you felt that was the most important. We feel parks is the most important part of this property. So we're starting with you, and that's a huge responsibility that you have. So tonight, bear with me, as you're looking at this plan or these plans that are in front of you, what you need to know is there currently is not a plan in place for this park. There is no such plan. We've seen drawings from the developer who has contracted with the property owner for a potential single-family home site. We've rejected those. We've actually sent those back to the developer and to the property owner and said, this is not our vision as a city council. You're lucky enough that you have Councilmember Dennis in the room tonight as well as myself, because we're both extremely interested in how you proceed down the path. And truly, we are looking as a council for your best feedback, good, bad, or indifferent. We want you to tell us very honestly what you think of this initial proposal. But that's all it is. It's a proposal. There's nothing definite. There's nothing written in stone. This process is going to take several months before we get to any sort of conclusion relative to how we want to move forward with park planning and all the rest of the transitional zoning planning for this piece of property. It will probably be January of next year at the earliest before council will make an ultimate decision. But you are the beginning, and therefore your role is very important. I also want you to know that the council and staff have worked for several years with Friends of the Mississippi, Friends of Pool 2, the DNR. We've also worked with our state legislative partners, Senator Bigham and our representatives at the Capitol. We've worked with Washington County, and we've worked with other agencies who have said that they have some interest in potentially putting money forward for acquisition of land that could be used as a park. Now, what we don't have is we don't have money in hand and we don't have money in the bank. We have a lot of people who say they're interested. We hope that that interest might someday lead to, money in hand. But what you also need to understand is the property owner has rights. This is his property. So any kind of an agreement or deal on parkland beyond what we have currently in place for park dedication or cash in lieu of park dedication would require some sort of an agreement outside of what currently exists in what's in front of you today. And that would require acquisition of capital. It would require that an independent person come in and take a look at the value of the property. And then what you also need to understand is that the property owner, he has a developer, Pulte Homes, who's interested in building homes on the property. And they are making him an offer, a dollar value for that property. The likelihood of any sort of agreement that would equate parkland to land used for single family would not be apples to apples in our estimation. The property owner would have to accept less money, in other words, for park than he would for single-family home development based on the value of the property for one use or the other. Now, that's not to say that he won't do that. That's not to say that that agreement could not be reached. That is simply a fact of the market that you want to be aware of. But that's not for you to decide tonight. What's for you to decide is, as you look at the current plan that's in front of you, what do you like? What don't you like? What would you like to see different? What would you like to see more of or less of? And what recommendation can you make to the city council? You are an advisory commission to the council. We value your feedback tremendously. We want you to tell us what you think. And then when it comes to us, we will have to take the next step. And we'll have to try to decide how we want to proceed moving forward with acquisition of additional property potentially, use of the property that you have on hand potentially, what is the property owner willing to work with us on? All things that we've had several conversations about over the last few years. Just remember that your advice is the catalyst for what's going to happen next. So it's a very serious conversation. The last thing that I just want to mention is, the various stakeholders who have interest in seeing this property develop for park. Again, whether that's the watershed district, the DNR, the county, the city, et cetera. We all recognize that this land is sort of a one-time shot. Once you've made a decision moving forward, you don't get to do it over again. So we're going to be very careful. We're going to be very cautious, and we're going to take all the time we need to make sure that we make the very best decision we can make. But again, that decision has to sync up with the desires of the property owner at the end of the day. And so that will be something that we'll need to continue working on as we work past your recommendations and then any recommendations that we get from others on this transitional use zoning property. So if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask Zach or myself this evening, or if you have questions that you want Zach to take back to the staff and then have a response provided to you at your next meeting, we can certainly do that. But I can't thank you enough for taking this on, because it is a very challenging situation due to the nature of the property and the fact that, Cottage Grove has viewed this property as a real gem for many, 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 many years, and this is an opportunity that we won't get over again. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. This time, I know there's a number of people here that wish to speak, and I think we'll start off with opening that up. First person, Elizabeth Odegaard, are you present? If you would step up to the microphone, state your name and your address. And also just comment for everybody here speaking. Generally, we're asking you to try to keep your comments to 3 minutes or less.
Okay.
And if somebody has really already pounded your issue already, please consider that also.
Okay.
Okay, before you start, I have a hand up.
I wanted to ask, there were several people that showed up after the meeting started. If they want to speak, can they?
they'll get a chance.
Okay.
Yeah, well, everybody that wants to have a shot at this can speak. So again, start with your name, your address, and the floor is yours.
All right, I'm Elizabeth Odegaard, and I'm at 9646 Hamlet. And I'm actually here on behalf of CSU Environmental School. I've chatted with a few people in the room, and we are a new school coming in 2022. And I know it's months down the road, but if for any reason buildings would be preserved at the Mississippi Dune site, we would be interested in leasing a building that would fit our needs. So that would be, it's kind of like a eye in the sky, but it would be our prime location. And we would love to create a partnership, and we would be kind of like an income stream for, I know it all comes down to money in the end, but we would love an opportunity to work with Friends of Mississippi or the parks if any of that land is saved. And as a resident of Cottage Grove, I hope that, this is a beautiful piece of property, and we know it's a gem, so I hope it is resolved in a way that protects our city and that property that's there for the younger generations as well. Thank you.
Just a question, you're interested in using the building, can you just describe what you would
Yep.
be doing with these buildings?
Yeah, so we would be wanting a spot for our environmental school, which will be serving kindergarten through 5th grade. And we kind of have found that property just phenomenal for what we would want to be doing as an outdoor school.
Estimate of how many students you would have?
We would be opening, we're estimating around 140, and then with the intention to grow to an 8th grade. And it's a public charter school.
Other commission members? Whoop.
Where else do you plan on being located if it's not at that?
We are in the process of finding our locations. So this would kind of be our first choice, and we have about a year right now to find a spot. We're set to open September of 2022.
All right, any other questions?
I don't know.
Thank you.
Thank
for
you.
speaking. Next on our list, Sarah Wirtz, if I'm pronouncing that right. Again, if you could state your full name and address.
Words or Wers. Sarah Wers, and I'm at 8642 Grosse Pointe Avenue South here in Cottage Grove. This is my first time speaking at something like this, so I'm a little nervous. But thank you for allowing us to come in and speak to this subject, because it's really important to a lot of people. My family and I have lived in Cottage Grove for 13 years, and I've had family in the area my whole life. We love to explore outdoors and enjoy going to different parks and nature areas around the metro. My 8-year-old son has been to Crosby Farm Park and many other areas along the river in St. Paul with his school and has started building his own connection to the river. Our family visited the headwaters at Itasca last summer. Our family also fishes and has canoed the areas around Gray Cloud Island. Having a place nearly in our backyard to further explore the Mississippi River would be incredible for us and definitely be a reason for us to stay in Cottage Grove. While I understand the desire for housing on this beautiful property, it saddens me. I occasionally hike at Great Cloud Dunes SNA, and I was there last week, and the bird's foot violets were blooming on a little hillside, and I walked a little farther, and I was at the top of the dune and just looking out over the prairie and across to the river and could see the golf course. And I just got so sad thinking that there's the potential for, over 100 homes to be built there. And I just imagine these rows of roofs that we would see instead of seeing this pristine environment and the river and what it could be and what it could remain for the future. So I hope that the property owners will seriously consider selling a portion of the property to the DNR to expand the SNA, and also consider the other proposals that are out there, the people that are interested in working with them to obtain some of that property. And also consider scaling back the housing development to allow more of the property to be restored. Hopefully, whatever housing does end up being built on the property will be done so with the environment in mind. We already have groundwater pollution from 3M, and this development will also have a huge impact on the land and the river. I hope that whatever the Parks Commission decides will also take this into consideration. I have reviewed the 3 options that you are considering tonight. I prefer option 1, but I still believe we can do better for our community and environment. I don't know what the county has planned for their site on Gray Cloud Island, but I think it would be important to make sure we're not overlapping any amenities between the two since they are so close together. I would prefer to have less amenities on this property in favor of more areas that can be restored, and the county can provide more amenities at their site. River access with the launch would be a huge plus for our area, for Cottage Grove residents. But is one site better than the other for that? I know there's issues with the river flow and sediment and everything going on there. I'm not an expert in that at all. I just know it's a potential issue. And it sounds like if the county is going to have a park down on the island, that they're also considering a marina. That would involve a boat launch. Do we need to in such close proximity for that? In option 1, it shows some camping sites, and I don't think that's well suited for a city park. The county already has campsites, campgrounds. They're already able to take care of that, and I don't think putting that on the city's shoulders makes sense for a few campsites at one park in our city. I love camping, but it just doesn't make sense for the city to also have that as an issue to deal with. Hiking trails and cross-country skiing trails would help the area be utilized in all seasons. I was recently at Whitetail Woods, which is a 456-acre Dakota County Regional Park. They had an incredible nature play area. I don't know if anyone has been there, but it's amazing. My kids and we were there with some friends for 5 hours playing on Friday. It was great. So a nature play area like that is large, actually has, logs, stumps, boulders, things kids can build forts with, rather than a nature-inspired playground structure. That's not what kids need. We have those all over the place. Let's give them something different and something that can be a draw to this area. I drove to Farmington for that. Tamarack Nature Center in White Bear has a similar thing. I drive there for that. I would rather drive here, stay here for that. So would my kids. I ask you to please keep the focus on any public space on this property around nature and preservation. This will allow all of us and future generations the privilege of enjoying what our river and its shoreline have to offer. Once an area is developed, there's no going back. So please do everything you can to preserve this hidden gem in our community and recommend that as much of this property be preserved for all of us rather than become houses.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Any questions from commission? If not, Tom, is Tom here? Drude?
I'm Tom Drude. I live at 8005 River Acres Road. And now, Zach, you have a face to put with some of the communications I've had, and Colleen as well, I think. So you know that I have some passion about this area. I've lived in River Acres for 45 years. So I've watched very closely what's happened to the river, how it's changed, and constantly does change. Also very familiar with Mississippi Dunes Golf Course, having golfed there from its beginning. I knew the former owner well, very well. And I'm encouraged by some of the comments that have been made tonight, especially the idea that this is a proposal. We came here tonight looking at 3 plans thinking, are they going to move forward on one of these? Isn't this a little bit too quick? I just want to echo the idea that we have such a great opportunity with this piece of property. You're not going to have it again. And it could be enjoyed by all of the city. Right now, for years I've been bantering about Cottage Grove having the most shoreline of any major city on the Mississippi River, from St. Paul to New Orleans. And people say, well, a lot of it's not accessible, but it's true. And we do not have a boat ramp. How can that possibly be? With this gem in our backyard. There's a lot more things I could say right now, but I just want to let you know that I'm glad to hear that this is a proposal. And there's a lot of work to do, and the right work needs to be done. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
Any comments? If not, I'm having trouble reading it. Is it Karu? Carla.
My name is Carla Indereden. I am at 10659 Great Cloud Trail South. It is the property 2 down from the golf course. So there's 1 home between myself and the clubhouse. And we're recently new, we moved into the community just recently in the last year. And we've absolutely fallen in love with this community. I had wanted to go towards Hastings. I did not know this was here. It was an amazing opportunity. And the first thing I saw was the golf course. I'm not making that up. I literally looked at the map. I saw the curve in the river. I saw the golf course. I saw that it was closed. And I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. Right next to a scientific and natural area. It's going to be amazing. They're going to expand it. Why wouldn't that be the obvious choice? It's going to be incredible to live right next to this amazing community resource. I moved in, met my lovely neighbors, some of which are here right now, and was blown away that there was a proposal for housing. And it was over 200 homes with no public access, and I almost died. I seriously have cried about it several times. This is just, it's an atrocity for that to be even remotely an option, in my opinion. I know this land very well. In the little bit of time I've lived here, it is unbelievable. I'm an environmental scientist by trade. I work for Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, and I look at that habitat and I understand the value of this, and it's extremely rare to have this in this area of the city, in this proximity to the middle, our capital city in the state of Minnesota. And I'm going to even add to Tom's comment that it's actually including all of the Mississippi River, so not just St. Paul to New Orleans, but actually Itasca. It's insane that we don't have that access, and the unbelievable draw that that would have been to me to know that that was a park. I mean, it's not even a question. And by the way, all those environmental agencies are 20 minutes away in St. Paul, so there's a lot of people who'd love to live here too. But I think that we have plenty of opportunity to build housing all over the place. This is different. This would be truly an atrocity to take this land out of the equation. And I know that the DNR has partially managed pieces of it already, that they have the money ready to buy the pieces that they can take on. And I know that the landowner would have to agree to taking just market value and not getting that huge, increase in income from the selling of homes, right, into the Pulte Homes folks. So I understand that economic argument very well, but I also understand the area and Great Cloud Island. If it does become a county park or a state park, whatever they end up doing with it, the mining company gets to decide that. It might be 30 years from now. That might not ever happen. I want to believe that so much, but I don't know. So what I do know is we have a decision right now to make, and that would give us something that nobody else has. This is an incredible resource, and I know this habitat. I walk along the river and clean up the trash that's coming down there. I understand the filtration that it's doing, and we cannot put homes on this property. If we do, it needs to be like 3, because there's too much important landscape here, and it's doing too many ecosystem services. The wildlife that lives in there alone, it would destroy me to see that go away. We just absolutely can't do this. It's not an option. We have to find a better option that allows for, I stand by at least half of this property being park. And I agree with the fact that it should be as natural as possible, because that is what the value of this area is. When you talk about standing on the top of the SNA and looking, it is gorgeous and undeveloped. That is the value of this property. We are 20 minutes from St. Paul, and we have gorgeous undeveloped river water shore, right? Lake shore. It's incredible. And I could go on and on and on about all the opportunities. We got 3M, Flint Hills, Pine Bend Refinery, Anderson Windows, Aggregate Industries, Bailey Nurseries, all right here, who could throw in a solid here and help us out. We've got a lot of interested parties from conservation organizations. We've got the public entities. You've got passionate neighbors. Let me tell you, several of us are here. We want to see this preserved. We know what this is like, how beautiful and amazing this property is. And like everyone has said, it will never, ever be an option again. Once it's gone, it's gone. Thank you.
Thank you. I understand we have one online person that signed up?
No, I have not. I have 3 people watching, but no comments.
No comments. Is there anyone else in the crowd that would like to speak? Please come forward. And could you state your name and address?
My name is Adam Grams. I live at 10655 Great Cloud Trail South. Council members, just wanted to bring up maybe a different angle on this. We just moved in over there. We love it there. It's great over by Great Cloud Island and the sand dunes. It's a special place. You go down there. There's so much about that, and I got excited about the place and just researching it before I moved there, and then I got into it and really enjoyed just the history that's there. There's the Native American history. There is the history to Minnesota and the Mississippi River. There is that used to be, that area was a launching point on the way up to Fort Snelling for people traversing the Mississippi. There's so much Native American history, the burial mounds that are out there. It is amazing area. It's not just the features and all that stuff. There's like that history, those limestone kills there. This is a destination place. You look at the area, we have Afton State Park's close by. We have, Three Rivers Park District. There's great parks for that, for sure. This is this area in our backyard that we have this opportunity to preserve. I mean, this could be an educational place. Think about it in the next years. That's my challenge to you, council members, is, think about Cottage Grove in 100 years. There's going to be plenty of developments everywhere. Parks, we have actually a lot of parks right now. It's great parks. They're kid parks. This would be a great adult park. destination history place, really focusing on the Native American history, the importance of that region, that island and the water surrounding there to the development of the Twin Cities, to Cottage Grove, just to the whole area. So that's what I challenge you to think about. Thank you.
Just to clarify,
Yeah.
we're not the council.
Sorry.
We're the park commission.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we have a very
All right.
limited role here tonight.
Okay.
But I
I
appreciate
wanted
it.
to- yeah,
And
address it
certainly,
formally.
I'm sure you could meet with Councilman Olson and
Okay.
find out the council schedule and provide your comments
right.
there too.
Appreciate
But
it.
thank you for
Yep.
your input. Is there anyone else out in the crowd? Please come forward.
Hello. My name is Eva Maxon, and I live at 963 963 Goodrich Avenue, St. Paul, Minnesota, 55105. I'm a little bit nervous. I've never done this before. This project, for this to be conserved as a natural sanctuary and to keep this place not a housing development, means so much to some of these people that I've heard of it all the way in St. Paul. It's not that far, but clearly this means a lot to all of you. So I'm going to read a part of the email that I sent to the mayor of Cottage Grove, Myron Bailey, and the Cottage Grove Parks and Recs director, Zach Doctor. So I'd like to urge you to reconsider this project idea. The idea of developing 200 houses on this piece of property, on this land, will make money, certainly. But stop for a moment and consider the world you'd like your children, grandchildren, and great-great-grandchildren to grow up in. Do you want them to grow up in a world where people have prioritized destroying nature and building concrete structures, ultimately leading to less and less available accessible nature spots? Or do you want them to grow up and live in a world where they can enjoy playing in the grass, lying in the shade of trees, listening to birdsong around them? We are in a time where consideration and preservation of natural areas is key to helping lessen the impact of anthropogenic climate change. I know I'm not alone in advocating for you to not move forward with this housing development. Instead, consider the possibility of making this into a public, natural park space. Children and families can enjoy the space, experience nature, and breathe fresh air. And finally, when I look for things to do around Minnesota, I look for natural areas. I often open up Google Maps and I hover around over green spots on Google Maps. And this typically would be an area that would pop up on Google Maps and that I would love to come see. I would bring my friends. I would, suggest this as a place to go to other people I know. But that wouldn't be the same for a housing development, and that would just, I don't know. I don't even know how this is even a debate. Like, this doesn't make any sense to me. So, I urge you to keep this as a natural nature place and to make it publicly accessible. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your input. Is there anyone else in the crowd that would like to speak? And Molly, nobody online?
Nope, no.
Okay, then I think we'll move it on. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. I just wanted to provide a couple of brief responses to the folks who took the time to be here tonight. Thank you for your comments. There were a couple things that I just wanted to touch on that got brought up in a couple of the comments. Number one, the idea of the county putting a park amenity on the island. That is something that the county has talked about for quite some time, and I don't remember who made the comment. I think it might have been Carla about aggregate industries and their role in that whole process. Those of you who've been here for a number of years, as I have, know that aggregate has done a lot of work in that area for many, many years. And they continue to extend their contract. And then when you're working in that area, you also have to partner with the Army Corps of Engineers. And there have been some proposals about how Aggregate wants to move forward with respect to some of their waste product that gets generated when they complete their mining operations. And so there may be more information coming our way this year on how the Army Corps of Engineers and Aggregate want to work together. But at this stage of the game, the most important thing for you to know is that Washington County does not have that park amenity on their 5-year capital improvement plan. So that means, at least at this stage of the game, today, if you look out 5 years on the CIP or the capital improvement plan, that project is not noted, nor is it funded, which would sync up pretty well with what Carla said about Aggregate's the one who's going to make that decision. So if you're looking at things from an either-or perspective, just know that Washington County doesn't really have any cards on the table at this stage of the game. It's a proposal, it's an idea, but it is not funded, nor is it in their 5-year CIP. And then the second piece that I wanted to talk about briefly is a couple of people mentioned the ability to get onto the water or a boat launch. That is also part of this conversation that the City Council has engaged in for a number of years, because it is critical that any sort of park amenity include access to the river. Now, a boat launch isn't a panacea, because remember, these properties in that area, whether it's on the island or along the dunes there, they're used to a lot of peace and quiet and kind of a more ruralish sort of lifestyle. And, putting a lot of boats on the water is going to upset that to some degree. But it is something that people want. So as we talk about boat launch, we also have to talk about what sorts of boats do we want to allow. If you don't know already, the Parks Department last year or the year before, they implemented a test with some kayaking and different things that folks have been able to take advantage of. And I can't recall from the top of my head, Molly or Zach may know, but there was tremendous response. A lot of usage of the river for those kayaks. And is there canoeing as well? Kayak, 800. Yeah, 800 people utilize that area for kayaking. So as you think about boat launch, I want you to think about that, because parks generate traffic too, and boats and things on the river are considered river traffic. And so we would need to be very careful with regard to any environmental impacts. And then last but certainly not least, just wanted to make a comment again about the fact that there are a number of governmental agencies and private groups, including nonprofits like Friends of the Mississippi, Friends of Pool 2, et cetera, who have expressed some interest in trying to put a agreement together that would include, some financial incentive for the property owner to accept remuneration for parkland. But understand that the property owner would have to be part of that agreement. So it's not something where we can simply dictate to him how he's going to use his property. As a city council, we do have land use responsibility and zoning responsibility, and we have some tools at our disposal. But, we generally don't engage in strong-arming property owners on how they want to utilize their property. So we would need to come to some sort of an agreement that was suitable for all involved. But that is for a later date. Your job this evening, once again, take a look at these proposals, which is all they are. Mr. Drood said it perfectly. They're proposals, and let us know what you like, don't like, want us to add, want us to subtract, give us guidance so that we can move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. As far as, what our assignment as a commission here tonight is, we're not here to decide if this turns into Old Park or whether homes come in. We have been given a limited assignment tonight saying if this happens, we're going to present 3 options to the Parks Commission, and we're going to give input. And again, input on this concept that may or may not happen. So please keep that in mind as we go over our three concepts. Zach, any more comments as far as getting into the concepts and all that?
No, other than if you want me to put anything up on the screen, I can certainly do that, but it's all in your packet, so it's up to you. And just let me know if you need any help dialoguing.
Can I ask a clarifying question? Is this okay?
Sure.
I just want to understand, has there been any?
Did you want to step up to the?
Carla Indereden again. I just want to understand if there's been any subject to the railroad discussion, as the railroad runs right through the middle of the property as far as homes are concerned, the insurance, because there's been fires along the railroad, and I'm just curious about that piece. I know we have homes along railroads, but
Initial dialogue
Yeah.
has happened with the
Okay.
railroad. This is a transitional zoning area, so we're actually starting with the parks planning because as a council, we identified in January to Zach and his team that we felt this was the most important part of this transitional zoning, so that we could get it right before we proceed down the line with any sort of transportation or infrastructure. The railroad has a lot of power. For folks who've worked in government, you know that the laws that the railroad are subject to are very old laws, and they're very much in the railroad's favor. So railroads can be challenging when it comes to any sort of development, whether it's park or housing or just plain old transportation infrastructure, but we haven't gotten there with them yet. So they've seen all the data. But as I said earlier, you know, the developer has signed a one-year agreement with Pulte. Pulte has submitted proposals to the city for development on this site. Those proposals have been roundly rejected by the city council unanimously, so we haven't gotten to the stage where we have even engaged in real dialogue with the railroad, the county, anybody else on that property, up until we get a proposal that we think is reasonable.
Well, and the basis of my question is based on the fact that the value of homes anyway has got to be greatly impacted. We live 2 properties down and it's very loud, which shakes. I can't imagine, it's every 25 minutes, you know? So
Yeah.
that's just a side question. It would be fine, I think, in a natural area because it is what it is. It's already there. But for homes, it doesn't make sense to me.
Thank you.
Thank you. Zach, it might be helpful if we put up the 3 options so people kind of know what we're talking about.
And I can just briefly explain how the 3 options work. They're all very similar in terms of making sure we preserve the river, the land along the river for public access, public park access. And then typically there's this greenway corridor that weaves throughout development. And then those are just, once again, concepts of you could do mixed, medium density and single family homes, high density throughout the property. One thing to note is that there is, you know, the primary access is typically shown as the access that exists today through the gate. There's also an option for a secondary access through a spot a little further south. Otherwise, you know, there is one of the concepts has more use of where the current greenhouse and maintenance building are, perhaps using that as an HOA, homeowners association area for a little mini park or greenhouse area. And it kind of comes down to, you know, do you want this to be more, do you want the recreational activity more condensed and more open space throughout the river? Or do you want the recreational opportunities spread out? They all do include a boat launch and some sort of river access to the water itself. So happy to stand for any questions you might have.
Why don't you go ahead if you have a
That's my chance for questions, but I did wonder, Zach, if you ever received the acreage figures from the consultants?
So these concepts are all about 15 to 20 acres of property along the river. And then the greenway corridors that travel north and west through the property are about 20+ acres. And those try to use with development comes stormwater requirements. So they try to take advantage of those stormwater requirements, much like we do any other developments in the community, to get trails around those and open space. So yeah, so about 15 and 20 for the active park area and about 20+ for the passive greenways, trailway areas.
All right, I'll start it off. I just have some general comments. It was somewhat confusing because two of the three options had similar type amenities, some didn't. So I'm just going to ramble through and you could take notes and figure out which one.
That's what we do, yep.
The trail systems on all three options appear to be the same, which look good to me. The boat launch options all, seem to be the same. And the parking and the docks, that all look good. I was a little unsure of what we're doing with all the buildings that are there. It wasn't clear if the buildings were going to belong to the city and be part of the park, or if you put in homes there, are they going to be used by some home association and things like that?
Mr. Chair, at this point, we are proposing to eliminate the buildings that are there just because of the shape they're in. And as a matter of fact, they're probably too large for a typical municipal building, and there's some damage there that's probably not
Yeah,
salvageable.
that was my next question. What shape? Yeah.
Sorry, the only one that is I think on concept one, it talks about reusing the greenhouse that is there to use that as a community garden.
So if we did follow through with the city park, would there be a city building there like we have at some of the neighborhood parks?
Yes, which are much smaller in scale.
Similar size?
Yep.
Okay, moving on, two of the options, 1 and 2, one has a putting green, the other one had a golf area. Because it's no longer a golf course, I'm not quite sure why we would want to include that. We don't have it in other city parks, and I believe we actually have ordinance. You're not supposed to be golfing in city parks, but again, I just don't see that being included. If homes come in and some home association wants to set aside an area, that would be up to them and not maintained by the city. Community gardens, that's an option 1 and 2. That would only make sense if there's homes coming in. It's a long way to drive if it turns into all, park property, whatever the end result is. What other options do we have close by as far as community gardens? Are we aware?
There's the farm,
Dodge Nature Center has one
Which
next
one?
to it.
I'm sorry.
Dodge Nature Center, you can purchase.
Okay.
Or rent it.
Shepherd's Farm is off of
Shepherd's Farm,
70th and
yeah,
Jamaica.
But again, if homes are going in, and if the people there want that, I could see that becoming part of their responsibility, not the city as part of a park. Options 1, 2, and 3, you have fire pits. I'm not quite sure who's going to maintain fire pits. If it's part of a city park, normally you want fires at night. Normally, we want to close down parks at a certain hour, so I don't know if putting in fire pits would be such a great idea. You list amphitheaters in options 1, 2, and 3. I'm curious as to say, what size would that be? What type of events would you plan on putting in there? I think we might have some sound issues if it's, if part of the city park. And also, I wish to point out, it seems like we have some real limited parking there if you want to have events down there. So I don't know if an amphitheater is really appropriate for right there in that spot. Canoe, kayak campsites, I think we're asking for trouble if we have people camp out overnight. I think a vast majority of campers would do well. But from my past employment with the city, I know you could have some problems with law enforcement down there late at night. And again, if you put in campsites, will the park be closed? Are you going to have it gated so nobody else could come in to those campsites? Things like that. Things I like, the fishing platforms. I think that's a great idea. I prefer the setup like in option 2 where you have 3 of them right by the main parking area, but you have 2 further down. So you could, pull in with your car, unload all your kids and have something close by. But if you're on your own, you want to get away, you can move down the shoreline a little bit. Overall, I love the concept of multiple picnic areas along the trails, multiple seating and viewing and observation areas. I think the idea of a multi-purpose lawn with a play area is great. And it sounds like we're not going to, well, if we do have a building, maybe a plaza area there. And that's my comments on your three options. I guess I don't like one specifically. I guess without the buildings, I thought we'd be heading more towards option 3 with all the stuff I just threw on from the other ones. And that's my input on the 3 options. I'll open it up to other commission members. Comments? Susie?
My button was broken. I thought you were mad at me, but I got it. I had a challenging time looking at these plans because it just doesn't seem like there's enough land for park there. Kind of echoing what we've heard from our community members who are here today, it's really hard to consider options with 15 to 20 acres along the river. I know there is additional acreage along these greenways, but if we've really made river access to be such a priority as a city and as a commission, I think we can do better than that. I love the idea of having a boat ramp or boat launch area because we need more opportunities to get onto the water. But in trying to educate myself more about this specific area, I've heard concerns about sediment and could larger boats even really get around in the backwaters? So before I could be in favor of having a boat launch, I'd need to have a better understanding of what types of vehicles would really be able to use that and what would be the lasting impact on the river area that we all love so much. I like that at least option 3 had a lot more land available, kept natural for people to explore or take field trips. But I don't think I can be in favor of any of these options because there's just not enough green.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll go. So I also am not a proponent of any of the 3 options. I think there's bits and pieces of all 3 that I like, but as far as like the boat ramp, I think if Cottage Grove's gonna have a boat ramp, we need to have a boat ramp, like not just for these boats or those boats. We need to figure out where we can put a boat ramp that is gonna be a boat ramp, like not just for small ones. I will say that, I mean, I don't live down there, so I don't get an opinion, but I'd rather see boat traffic in that area than vehicle traffic in that area for 200 plus houses. As far as the options, I liked the outdoor fitness part since we've been talking about that a lot on the commission. I liked the play area, but I'd like to see it nature themed. I know we brought that up on the commission quite a few times as well. I'd like to see more of the hiking and skiing trail opportunities more than what's listed. I also don't see the point of the golf aspect of this. And I also don't see the point of the community gardens. Nor do I think we need campsites or fire pits down there. I'd like to, I mean, it would be nice if there was a way that our city could figure out a way to get more land purchased off this property. I know it's an undertaking and I know it's many moving pieces and parts and agreements, but I think that needs to be the priority of our city right now, not figuring out options. I think we need to be focusing on how to get more of this land. Oh, and to talk about the school. So you brought that up. I've just been like thinking about it in my head. Like, I mean, I don't even know if is that something that would even be feasible without, I mean, are there gonna be buildings to even have, and something like that even as a possibility? Like, I mean, I did see it as a revenue generating thing for the city, which would be great, right? You have something there to bring in money, but I mean, with 140 students, I don't see anything on these options that would even be a feasible option to have that as an, for them.
Commissioner Crabtree, it would have to be new buildings.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question? Sorry, I'm annoying. I just want to understand the evaluation that was done, because I've seen the clubhouse and I know that the windows are broken, I can see inside of it, but it seems very structurally sound, so I'm curious where that evaluation's been done and exactly how much the estimate would be to just refurbish that. Seems appropriate for a school.
Yeah, so we haven't done a full-scale architectural evaluation of the building. It's more based on usability. So just the way that the facility is laid out with the kitchen and the 2 levels, and that is a very big building for us to utilize for recreational activities. We obviously already have a wedding and banquet center, so the interest in running 2 of those operations is probably fairly limited. But we have not done that full analysis. This is just based off of what we've seen there. Concept phase right now, right? So.
Right. And I do think you'll need more than 40 parking spaces. Just throwing that out there.
One question.
Or whatever is listed. I think most of these say like 40 stalls.
If you don't mind, I'd like to make a couple more comments. The other thing, besides being a golfer, I'm a boater. And having lived in this area for 45 years, I know about the sentiment, I know about all it. Basically, what you can use it for is small craft. The fishermen know that, the big boat people know it. They're not gonna go in there. It's the backwater. And it changes all the time. Another point I'd like to make is that water that you depict on here, on all 3 plans, that's a natural aquifer. It's not sewer runoff. It runs year-round. It's fresh water coming out of the springs that are there. Now, I'm not an hydrologist or anything like that, but I'm very familiar with it. As a matter of fact, the previous owner pumped water out of there to irrigate his golf course. And so there's plenty of water rolling through there, and it probably goes down to some of these people's property further down the line. So no matter what we do with this property, we want to preserve that. You don't want to disrupt it. A developer coming in there has to be awfully careful, and I'm sure people will make sure that happens. Regards to the building you were talking about, it is a very good building. Yes, it has some broken windows. If a developer comes in here, he's gonna tear it down. That's what they do, they bulldoze things. It's the fastest, quickest way to do things. But it has a lot of potential. Both buildings down by the water have a great deal of potential. A few more comments. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, maybe I can just comment real quick on the water trail. So this water trail is just a line on a piece of paper that shows that the intent is that this park is one of many recreational features on the river that we're trying to draw attention to. So whether that's a future county park, whether it's the current Settlers Island, visiting the lime kiln, whatever it might be, our goal is, and Hazen P. Moore Park is a launching area for those kayak rentals. The goal is to make a water trail so that people can get on the water and hit multiple destination points along the river. I know Commissioner Bonison has a history of traveling the river. I believe there is a channel that runs through there. It's a little bit deep, but you kind of got to know what you're doing. So we'd have to work with the Corps or someone that knows that and can flag that too. So.
Yeah, absolutely. The channel runs basically on this shoreline over here. It meanders in and out, but where the boat ramp is at right there, it does tend to go off towards the steel bridge, and then it gets real shallow in there. And at certain times of the year, you're not going to be able to get through there with with many boats. A small fishing boat, you'll be fine. I run a bass boat, and at certain times of the year, I can get in there if I go on plane. I'm very careful. But yeah, just the area by itself will limit the type of boats that you're gonna see in there. The steel bridge and then the cement culvert are going to limit what gets in there. It's very limited. I can only get in there certain times of the year, even with my boat. So, beautiful area though, and I would, yeah, if nothing else gets done, a boat ramp needs to go in somewhere in Cottage Grove. So, as far as the plans are concerned, I would look at option 1. But again, I'm gonna scratch the golf courses, I'm gonna scratch the campsites. I like the piers, how the piers are spread out, and then they're far enough away from the boat ramp as well. A lot of times when you have a fishing piers next to a boat ramp, a lot of times people will fish on the dock by the boat ramp. It's nice, it's fun to fish there, but it also creates kind of a safety issue for the boater and the person fishing. But if you spread these out, this is probably a better way to do it. You get privacy, get solitude, quiet, and the depth of the area where these 3 items or these 3 docks would be placed would give the fishermen some opportunity as well, because it does, fishing's not great in here, okay? I'll be honest with you, it's like a quarter-mile wide. There's a 6-foot channel that runs through there, if I'm not mistaken, roughly. It's a very narrow channel, maybe 50 yards wide, but then the rest of it's like 2 feet deep for the other quarter mile. So it's all silted in for the most part, so you gotta be very careful here. But where the boat ramp is at right there, that is one of the deeper parts, and that area is gonna have to be dealt with by the Corps or DNR, whoever puts that boat ramp in is gonna have to make sure that gets dredged accordingly. I too would love to see more acreage in here. Obviously, this is pretty small considering what that is. As a kid, I used to play in here. As a young kid, I used to trap in here. I used to go hunting down here. I used to spend a lot of time. I know this area very well, okay? Beautiful area. I would love to see more of it. I'd love to see it maintained and preserved, but these are the options we have right now. So based on what we have, I would say option 1, but make those corrections and hopefully we can do better.
Question? Comment?
Yeah, I have a comment if I could do it. Good evening. I'm Whitney Clark. I'm also from Friends of the Mississippi River. And I thought I'd just, because there's been some comments tonight about the potential to expand the acreage and protect more of the Dunes site, I thought I just might offer a little details from the work that we've done over the last couple of years with potential funding sources. It's one of the things that Friends of the Mississippi River does is try to work with landowners, work with local governments to figure out how to get places like this protected. Across the river, we were successful over the last 20 years in establishing the Pine Bend Bluffs Scientific and Natural Area, which is formerly all private land. So just a few thoughts about that. In addition to the city's own park dedication ordinance, which would require a developer to provide some of the land as park, there's also a couple of cash sources. The DNR has been mentioned. They do have money, state money in the bank right now that they would be excited to deploy to acquire some of the property to add to the SNA. That would be, of course, subject to scientific and natural area kind of standards. So it's very passive. Those of you who know the Great Cloud Dunes Scientific and Natural Area, it would be managed like that. You may be aware that the county also has, Washington County has a open space land protection fund. They have expressed an interest in helping with the acquisition here. They typically, they don't have a hard, fast rule, but they typically like to be around 40 or 50% of the cost. So they wouldn't contribute to the scientific and natural area portion. They would be contributing to another portion. For instance, a park that would be owned by the city. The county is not interested in owning the property, so they would be interested in participating as a funding partner if the city agreed to take it and manage it as a park. And they're not interested if the city isn't interested. So that's an important part of this. Friends of the Mississippi River has a small grant, about $250,000, which we would be able to contribute to this. We also have the ability to go back to the state for more money through the legacy funds, and would be happy to do that on behalf of the city to be able to access more acreage. And there also, throughout this process, we realized there might be a possibility that all the funds might not line up at the time that we needed to do the deal. And so we have been in close contact with the Conservation Fund, which is a national land conservation nonprofit that specializes in providing bridge financing. They're not going to contribute funds permanently, but they would be able to provide dollars up front to liquefy a deal so that while funding partners pulled the rest of the funding together. And then finally, we have been part of in the past and have been in touch with some conservation developers. So if a portion of this site was to be developed, it could be developed by conservation developers who specialize in clustering the developed portion and retaining as much excess land, either private or public. So in some conservation developments, you have cluster development, and then you have privately owned, but in some cases eased property that functions as open space and natural area. It's not developed, purposely not developed. And as Colleen mentioned in her comments earlier, typically what we find is that these developments adjacent to big, beautiful park amenities like this are more valuable. And they, to the extent that tax base is an issue that the city is thinking about, it's a way to capture more tax base per acre if you do it right. So those are, I thought before we finish tonight, it would be helpful if I shared some of that information.
Thank you.
Just one.
Adam, do you have?
Was it my turn?
I see you're chomping at the bit there.
That's okay, I don't want to cut anybody off. I agree with all of my fellow commissioners' sentiments about it'd be nice to have more land. I'm really excited that we're going after the entire shoreline. And if we could even double the size of this, and move it farther east, it would be fantastic. Just a couple of comments that I would have is, would it be possible to look at access farther to the west, where if we did put a boat launch in, you're not trucking boats through neighborhoods and moving it over, I guess, to where that road is?
Just so the maps are kind of goofy. This is north, are you saying?
Oh, that's north.
So moving it east, further down the shoreline?
Further to the left, towards towards the boat launch, where the boat launch would be. And I think we talked about parking a little bit, and it doesn't look like there's enough parking for this type of space, especially if we're programming to the building of the Four Seasons building. Because it says, 15 trailers, and then an additional 40 spots, looks like, but that doesn't seem like enough space when you look at the whole map. Is the desire for the parks to start programming to these buildings? I know we've talked about wanting more programming on the other side of 61.
Currently, it'd be open for either rentals or programming, so probably some combination of both, which is what we typically do with our park buildings.
I'm a big fan of the park programming, spreading it out,
Yeah.
and especially if we can have more nature areas in this. I like the woods. If I had to choose one, I'd be with Mr. Bonson on option number 1. I like how it's spread out. I like how there's not a lot of stuff on the, we'll say the bottom part of the picture where it's more natural. Those are really my only additional comments.
Thank you.
Paige, any comments?
Sure, so just reiterating what everyone's been saying, I definitely think that there needs to be more park space. I know when I go to parks, obviously I specifically look for like trails and hiking and like pretty things to see along the way to take like photos and stuff with friends. I'm not a big into fishing, but I know my brother is, and I know my dad is, and I know there's been like at my house frequent complaints about like there not being enough like boat launches and stuff like that around here. So I think like a boat launch would be a great idea around here, especially since so many people I know love to fish. But I guess and I would agree with your point too, where there needs to, I think it would be good to have it be the program spaces spread out. It would be nice to have that instead of having it all clustered together.
Okay, any other commission comments? Comments?
I agree with what Paige said.
Oh, didn't see you.
More river access. But yeah, pretty much everything that Paige said, I agree with.
Any other comments from the citizens? Go ahead, step up.
Well, in addition to just looking into that building potential and seeing if we could reuse that, because obviously that would be the best case scenario. We don't want to create more waste than we have to. So definitely reusing what we can. We have potential income from a school, which would be amazing, monthly lease, right? So that would be pretty great. And you could also drive revenue with kayak rentals and cross-country ski rentals, things that we know are low impact and high impact on just building natural values in the community. And you still won't see that stuff on the landscape, right? So focusing on the kinds of activities that aren't going to be built structures, reusing what's already there, I think that this can absolutely be done based on everything that I've heard and the financial resources we have at our disposal. Plus, like I said, there's a lot of corporate people who could owe us some stuff for what they've done around here. So just saying that one more time. Thanks.
All right.
Justin, I have a question. Do we know what the developer had, or what they're being offered for this property? Like how much money, or like the financial backing that the city or investors would need to come up with to even be a contender? I mean, if someone's offering me millions over market value, I mean, yep, I want to do the right thing, but you know what I mean? Like that's, like, so is there, like, do we know what we're even contending with?
Yeah, I'll try to give you a short answer to that, although it's a long answer. So when you say the words market value, what you have to recognize is the value is whatever the market will bear based on what the potential use is. So I'm going to go back to the very beginning when I said that this is a transitional use zoning area. The property owner has several options, and he bought this property out of foreclosure. It was available to anybody who wanted it. You could have bought it. I could have bought it. Anybody could have bought it. He chose to buy it. He took the risk. He took the financial risk. He took the legal risk. And when I say legal risk, the former owner actually had a 1-year right of first refusal. So the property owner, when he purchased it, had to sit on it for a year to see if the former owner could come up with financing to actually buy it back. And that was a contracted agreement. That agreement expired last November. At that point, the property owner started to have serious dialogue about what he wanted to do with the property, he and his wife, what they wanted to do with the property, which they bought for investment purposes, and they started to shop it around, so to speak. Now, we had a Zoom call a number of months ago. I can't exactly remember the date, where the mayor was involved, I was involved, Friends of the Mississippi were involved. We had representatives from the DNR and the county and the city and the watershed district and others to talk about exactly what you all are talking about tonight, which is the property owner interested in gifting and/or taking compensation for a portion of this property or perhaps the entire parcel to utilize for park space? And in that Zoom call, he was fairly non-committal about his desire to, work with us on that program. And then shortly thereafter, we found out that he signed the agreement with Pulte to potentially develop the property if they could come up with a development plan that met with the city's vision. And as I told you earlier, the city has rejected the plans that have come our way thus far. So we know what his offer is on the property. If we were to engage in any sort of a deal where all of these various participants who are interested in acquiring more parkland actually put their money on the table, because there's several people who are interested at this point in time. But again, we haven't seen the dollars because there just hasn't been a conversation around how much would it take and those sorts of things. There would need to be an independent appraisal done on the property. That appraisal would then be presented to the property owner. And of course, that appraisal would be for the use of the property as park. There are varying degrees of value to the property depending on the usage. So if the appraisal for park was, let's just say, $100,000, and then the appraisal that we lined up next to it was for single-family homes for $1 million, that's quite a gap. And so the property owner would then need to agree to meet somewhere in the middle to hopefully acquire additional property for park space. And if he agreed to meet somewhere in the middle, we would then need to put enough money together to actually meet whatever his agreed price point was. That would be a bit of a lengthy process. We have not engaged in that process at this time. Not to say that we won't or couldn't, but at this point in time, that has not occurred. So yes, we know what he's been offered by the developer. What we don't have is what would it take to acquire the property as park, and whether or not he'd be willing to lower his price expectation to actually work with us towards that end.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
It does. I was just, I was only curious if the city knew that, because
Yes.
if there are all of these options, right, for dollars, I know we haven't seen the dollars, but I was wondering if any of that could potentially be of help. So that's the
Yeah.
only reason I was asking.
Good question. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Could I just add something quick to the value question? Can you all hear me, or would you like me to go up to the mic? Okay. So Lisa Mueller again, with Friends of Mississippi. I have spent the better part of my career, about the last 30 years, doing land acquisitions for conservation organizations and entities. Most recently, happy to be with FMR. I also worked for the Nature Conservancy for many years, commissioned hundreds of appraisals, literally, and know full well that any appraiser worth their salt does not assign a value to a property based on its proposed use. The value is assigned based on something called the highest and best use, and also an evaluation of the larger parcel. They have to do a larger parcel analysis. In this case, they would have to do a second appraisal because there was an appraisal done for the DNR in 2018, I believe. It's no longer valid because the property owners, the current property owners, own land adjacent to Mississippi Dunes. So the whole analysis changes, And DNR has been waiting to conduct a second appraisal until they got some go-ahead from the current property owner in order to be able to perform that, because obviously these appraisals are expensive propositions. The other thing, to utilize any of that grant money that Whitney mentioned, any of the state grant funds, they require that we go through this very formalized process to commission an appraiser, a certified public appraiser who specializes in open land valuations, and again, highest and best use needs to be considered. So it wouldn't be, I beg to differ on the need to reconcile values. I don't think that would have to happen. I think it would be, a value would be presented based on current zoning. So it would be based on transitional zoning, not on single-family development. You're absolutely accurate in that sense. But we have had that conversation with the current property owners too, and suggested that there would be a way to piece together these different pots of money and have maybe the enhanced value come from the developer. And we have a conservation developer who we've had fairly lengthy conversations with, Robert Engstrom, who you may all have heard of. He's done a number of conservation developments in the Twin Cities area. And he would, as a fellow developer, he would pay a premium for his portion of the property. So I think the value question is very tricky. It always is. It's always the biggest dilemma probably in terms of being able to acquire land for conservation purposes. But we are confident that we could come up with a value that would meet the needs of the sellers, both husband and wife, joint owners of the property, and meet the needs and requests and hopes for the larger community to acquire a larger part of the property for conservation.
So in response to that, just remember that the property owner has in his mind what the value of his property is.
Well, that's always true, right?
Correct. So if we get an appraisal that says the property is worth X, and the developer who is looking at the property for single-family homes says, I'll pay you Y, and Y is dramatically more than X, the question becomes, do these public entities then have the ability to meet that same price? Or is there some sort of negotiation? Hence the phrase meet in the middle, because the property owner has to accept the offer.
Okay, I think I'm going to try to get the focus back onto the agenda item for tonight. We've been presented 3 options for a concept on a park. This is my comment. I think, we're looking at a very complicated issue, much more so than I realized coming into this meeting tonight. I think on one hand, you have the owner. His interest is for profit. You have the city who wants to increase their tax base with housing development. You also have the city that wants to protect its natural resources. You have come to the Parks, Recreation, and Natural Resource Commission. And I don't think it should be a shock that after, we've discussed this, that I think this would be my recommendation, anyway, that you have to go back, and it would be my recommendation, and I'm not speaking for everybody else, but it's what I've been hearing, is we think we need more land for the park and natural resource portion of this land if we could get it. I understand, again, it's so complicated with the DNR and what you got to go through, and I know we got into land values, we got into the weeds, which is not the point, what we're trying to accomplish here today. But if you're looking for, I think we put the cart before the horse here, really. You're asking us to comment on 3 park proposals before we decide where we're going, the final decision on this land. So what I would recommend, at least from the commission, is we try to expand the area. I think we've all commented on, we think we need more land. That would be our recommendation. We know we're just a little piece of the puzzle, but you've come for our recommendation, that's it. As far as all the other little minutia stuff, yes, we all want fishing piers and benches and all that. You have our comments there, but I think with that, we're throwing it back to council to dive into this and mud wrestle with everybody or whatnot. And when you come back to the Parks Commission, maybe with a little clearer idea of what we're going to end up with, and then we could get into the details of how to set up the park and to land around the park. That's my comments.
I agree.
Anybody else?
I think we should also note our attendance tonight. Our Parks Commission meetings are usually not this big, and I think it speaks to the value that our community has for this property. So it's not just the opinions of the commission, but a reflection of the voice of our wider community.
Mr. Chair, maybe it'd be helpful if I try to summarize what I'm hearing from the commission, which is, concept one seems to be a preference because of how the amenities are laid out, how they're spread across the property. I've heard loud and clear that there needs to be more research into acquiring more land for the property. The boat launch, the benches, the green space, the trails, the fishing piers are all things that are exciting to the commissioners, and the building needs to be looked at, but some sort of a building feature out there. Things like the greenhouse, the golf, the fire pits, not as important, and can be eliminated from the plan. Playground should be included, but more of a nature-based theme to playgrounds and fitness areas and things like that.
So do we have to vote on one of these options tonight, or can we say we don't want to vote on an option? We want like them to like try and get more land first? Because I know it's like recommended, right, that we come to a consensus on one of these options. So like, can we say
You can make whatever motion you like.
I make a motion, we table any recommendation on these three options tonight.
Second?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That's the motion that carries.
And then I will forward the comments as well as the motion to the council with the plans.
On behalf of the commission, I wish to thank everybody who came out tonight and was present and expressed their opinion. This is how city government should work. Thank you all. Stick around for the rest of this exciting meeting. I mean, we're not used to having a crowd. Zach, I also make a motion, should we take a 5-minute recess? Second, Carrie, 5-minute recess.
Take a break.
Can we take our masks off for 5 minutes? Is that allowed?
Action item B, East Ravine Parks and Trails Master Plan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. Master plan number 2 of 3 for the night. This is the East Ravine Master Plan. We've talked about this in the past, preparing for development east of Keats Avenue and then south down to Cottage Grove Ravine Regional Park. A little bit of development west of Keats Avenue near the shops at Cottage View by Walmart and Woodridge Park there for what development areas are left. So really trying to identify, so the service area is the area in orange here, and then we identify where existing parks are, and then try to, the first map is planned park and trail locations for neighborhood parks, and then in yellow are those trail locations. The dotted green is the Ravine Parkway, so everything kind of bases off of that. And then we try to make sure that there's a neighborhood park within a half mile of each housing development area. And then protecting all the great natural areas like the lake and any other trail connections that are there. And I'm missing one map on here.
Do we still have quorum if Paige and brother aren't here? Okay.
So, at this point, looking for feedback from the commission as we, in the same process, we're going to be bringing this to the city council hopefully on May 19th for discussion. So looking for feedback as we prepare the East Ravine area for parks and trails development. Same scenario, trying to get ahead of development proposals so that when developers come in, we can say this is where we want our parks and this is where we want our trails. Obviously, there's a bunch of links in between there that can happen. Parks can shift a little bit and we're not identifying what's in each park, but trying to identify where they belong. Looking for a recommendation to approve the master plan for city council review.
I have Neighborhood Park H.
Yep.
The one down there. I was wondering if that could be moved further north so that it's adjacent to 90th Street. I know I said last time I wanted all the parks off of the major roads, but that one in particular has that historic site with the concrete fly guide. So if that one was like on 90th Street, then that landmark would be within the park, which I think would be really cool.
Sure. I can make note of that.
The concrete arrow
Oh,
that.
yeah, for the old.
Oh, yeah, the Jansen, yeah.
Yeah, the mail arrow, the old airplane mail arrow. The reason it was put where it was currently is there's a dead-end road there that was bringing in future neighborhood access, so, but we can look at that.
Just because if it's, the arrow is just like by the side of 90th, not everybody wants to walk up that hill to see an arrow. But if there was a park there too, and you could like sit down for a while after climbing up that hill, that'd be nice.
Yes.
I think it really looks good. I know this whole concept of the Ravine Parkway started way back when I was still with the city. And I thought it was one of the best things the city proposed. And then because of the economy, it just kind of fell off the wayside, so I'm really excited about this. And I think this is an excellent plan. The only comment I'd like to have in regards to enhanced trails quoting, should be made wide enough, should be wide enough to be natural in character as opposed to feeling like a user in the backyard of a home. I really want to, emphasize as you get into the trail, inner parks, make them wide enough and consider when you start doing trails to make them wide enough. Maybe Adam might talk about, Minneapolis, when they do trail system, a lot of the time they'll have separate markings for bikes and walking or even separate. So plan for the future. Make them wide enough. You might have to separate them out at some future time. But just entering in a park like that, a lot of open space on either side. I think the plan looks great. It's my comments.
I also like it. I think it's neat. Right now, is there any access to this water feature in here currently, or is that still private?
All privately.
All private around there. Okay, interesting. All right.
But
No,
it is over 20 feet deep, so it's a significant water source there, yeah.
Interesting.
Hasn't always been, but because of development and watershed, it's been filling
Yeah,
up.
I've noticed a lot of flooded timber in there as you drive by it. So, interesting.
Other comments by the commission?
No, I like it. I think you incorporated everything we talked about before. Is the new guideline within a half mile of a park, or is it still 10-minute walk to a park?
Stumped.
Based on these circle, what?
Stumped. I think it's both, but depends how fast you walk. Is that a good answer?
I don't know, that's the guideline that I always heard was
Yeah.
a 10-minute walk. You wanted everybody to be within a 10-minute walk
Yeah.
to a park or park property.
Yeah. I think it's a combination of both.
But, yeah, I think we
Half
totally
mile,
did it here.
10 minutes. Yeah.
Anyone else?
So I've got 2 comments. If you want to make a motion to approve with those 2 comments, then we can send it on to council.
Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Cottage Grove Athletic Facilities Improvement Plan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a regurgitation of a athletic facilities improvement plan from 2014. We met with the user groups again, tried to update. We were really proud of the accomplishments that came out of that first plan. So we're trying to make sure that the importance of our athletic facilities are noted, and we try to work with those groups to make sure we're prioritizing what improvements are necessary to keep those fields in good shape, keeping the families that use them happy with the product that we're putting out, and then also inviting visitors in the community for sports events and tournaments and whatever else it might be. So puts our best foot forward, so trying to work with those groups. And then it also helps us prioritize funding in terms of getting funding through the city, but also getting donations to work on those projects or grants. So it's been a really good tool for us so far, so just looking for a recommendation to approve that athletic facility improvement plan.
And I'll start off, I thought it was very good. I really liked your evaluation on trend for growth in each sport. It's important that we try to predict where we're going with all this. My only other comment is, we've talked about multi-use artificial turf and sometimes with lights, but I would encourage that we try to get in some type of artificial turf early on in the plan and really be able to evaluate whether we get our money's worth out of it early on. And if we do, then we could try to incorporate it into the rest of the plan as time goes on. Other comments?
So, is there any thought to moving the, is it the Glacial Valley Park that's gonna be off Ravine? Is there any thought to moving it sooner than when it's proposed for?
You tailed off at the end there.
Just sooner than when it's proposed for?
Oh, sorry. So that's a pretty large community park, so we are planning a 2-year approach, kind of like we did with Hamlet. So we'll start grading and putting in the infrastructure for the park in 2022, and then finishing in 2023. Just because of the size of the park and the limited funding options we have available, because we still are spending money on Hamlet Park and Oakwood Park and things of that nature, we kind of have to prioritize and balance out how those projects get done. So the answer can always be yes, but you need dollars behind it to make it happen, so.
I have $5.
So that's a conversation for CIP. You guys will review the CIP. You'll review budget processes as well, and that's where your opportunity to be to reprioritize those things as well.
It would just be nice to see, especially with all the development that's happening now over there, and
Yep.
that's all.
It's growing fast.
Any other comments?
I found a tiny typo.
Uh-oh.
Oh,
Write it down and bring it to me later.
Okay.
okay, do I have a motion to accept the contents of the plan?
Motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Commissioner Brown, you have a presentation on 2021 Art Trail?
Yeah, so in 2019, you all supported my little experiment of doing the art trail in Highlands Park, and it went pretty well, and so I want to do it again. I wasn't excited about it last summer because I was still freaked out by COVID, and I thought other people might not want to touch shared art things outside, but I'm getting more comfortable, and hopefully other people are too. But I thought it would be fun to move the art trail around to some of our larger parks so it gets a little bit more exposure and a little bit more use. I did mention my idea to a networking event from Chamber of Commerce, and there were some members wondering if we were seeking sponsorship, and I was like, not right now, but people are interested in using it. There is, through community education, they work with adults with disabilities who'd like to take a group field trip to go and engage with the station. So with your support, I'd like to do it again and move it around to different parks, pretty much the same stations, but I'm hoping we could add a big xylophone. Just wondering your thoughts on that.
Any comments?
Adding a what? I'm sorry?
A xylophone.
I got you. All right.
I always thought that was missing. I think that's a good idea. So,
nickel for every time I heard that.
you might be able to buy some parkland, yeah. Okay, do I have a motion to support the traveling art trail?
Absolutely. Yeah, I'll make a motion.
I have a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. June meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. Historically, we've done a tour, parks tour in June. With COVID restrictions, and I know things are easing up, I'm just looking to the commission to give some direction on, should we do a standard June meeting and then delay the parks tour? Or we could do a parks tour event where the commissioners actually drive themselves from site to site and we meet at the sites. So just looking for some direction on the commission on how you'd like to handle the June meeting.
I know I talked to Zach before, I was thinking about maybe switching the June meeting with the August meeting and do the tour, the bus tour. If COVID is more acceptable at that time, where we could all get on a bus, people would feel comfortable.
One quick comment, Councilman Olson made a good suggestion. It could be possible, the landowner's been very flexible with us on going onto his property, so if that's something the commission would want to do in June, it's possible we could meet out there and walk the property.
Yeah, whenever we do this, I'd love to get down there.
The dunes, right?
and Take a look.
Absolutely, yeah. God, I've been there since I was a kid.
I saw was that 5 head nods?
Yeah.
5 strong head nods.
Yes.
So we'll try to coordinate the meeting at the Mississippi Dunes. If not the Mississippi Dunes, then we'll just do a standard meeting here, looking for another date to do a outside meeting.
If we don't do the dunes, do we want to do it outdoors at a park like we have in the past?
Do that?
Yep.
Okay. Either way, we're going outside.
Yes.
That's what I'm hearing.
Yes.
I will not be able to make the June meeting.
Okay.
Unacceptable.
Motion to
Today is my anniversary and I'm here. You make it happen. I'm just
I
kidding.
haven't
we
seen my
go.
mama in almost 2 years.
Okay, that's acceptable.
Okay, presentation of information.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Most of the information's your packet, and I have information on park improvement projects that are happening, division updates from each of our divisions, ice arena, recreation, parks, and River Oaks. If you have any questions on those, I can take them. Otherwise, I also have educational material. Just a little talk about prescribed burns. There's actually been, Hidden Valley was just burned, and then also they're going to be burning Pine Tree Pond Park tomorrow behind the fire station. So lots of good activity there that helps the ecosystems.
Hey, Zach, do we know
Okay,
when they're gonna open the building at Ravine Park, the new building, or?
No, but I was just there this weekend, and boy, it's close to being done. The plan was to be done by June, so I'm assuming that's still the projection.
It looks nice.
Looks really nice. Yeah.
Okay, action updates, 2021 park improvement plans.
Talked about that. The next one was the community center.
Oops,
As
yeah.
far as the community center, lots of work being done behind the scenes, and that information is about to come out more to the public here in the next couple of weeks. So by June, I think you'll have flyover images of the facility. You'll have more data on dollars and cents and taxpayer impact and what the referendum question might look like. So lots of information to be coming soon.
Okay, donation acknowledgements.
None tonight?
Staff reports and okay, we did
I already
that.
covered that. Sorry, I got ahead.
Commission comments. I just point out mostly to Molly, that Wife and I were walking through Woodridge Park on our walk for the Easter egg hunt. We came across it. Really crummy day, but you had a great turnout. And I compliment you on the job you guys did down there.
It was our big first event, and like, so we had to go.
Council comments. Councilman Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First and foremost, I want to compliment all of you. You did a magnificent job tonight. I know that as a Parks Commission, it is not common to have a lot of public engagement at your meetings, but you really did a nice job of taking everything that you heard under advisement, asking good questions, and providing the sort of input that we as a city council really need in order to move forward with, the next stage of this conversation. And really, we are in the early stages, but thank you so much for all of the comments that you made. I've got 3 pages of notes here from you and from the public who came this evening, and I'm very grateful for the work that you did tonight. Second thing is, I wanted to mention that this week, if you are not aware, is National Police Week. This is the week when we honor the brave men and women who serve as law enforcement officers across the United States, and we also remember the fallen. And that's really a very important thing for all of us to do. We will have National Law Enforcement Memorial Day on the 15th this year. Thus far in 2021, we've had 119 officers who have made the ultimate sacrifice in service to their communities. And I want everybody to know that as a community and as a city council, we have tremendous respect for the men and women who serve in law enforcement, who act as first responders, who run towards trouble and danger when most people would run away. And we, as a council, do our very best to make sure that our officers in the city of Cottage Grove have all of the tools, all of the equipment, all of the training, all of the facilities that they need in order to do their job well, to do their job safely, to serve the public with excellence and honor and integrity every day, and most importantly, to go home at the end of their shift to their families. So please don't forget to thank a law enforcement officer, and Chair Zerbe, let me thank you for all your years of service to the city of Cottage Grove as part of the Cottage Grove Police Department. So don't forget, Law Enforcement Memorial Day is the 15th, and hopefully that 119 won't grow before then. I also want to remind you that next week is Public Works Week, which includes our fantastic Parks Department. So this is when we honor the men and women who serve in public works and who help us with all of the infrastructure that actually makes our city work. When I was a brand new council member in 2008, Councilmember Pat Rice took me aside and said, don't forget that if somebody turns on the water faucet and the water doesn't come out, or it doesn't come out clean, or if they get up in the morning and they need to go to work and the roads aren't plowed, you're going to hear about it. You're going to hear about that more than you're going to hear about anything. And that, of course, has proven to be true. The good news is those instances are few and far between because we have a tremendous, very dedicated, skilled Public Works Department here in the city of Cottage Grove. So next week, Public Works Week, this week, Police Week. I also wanted to just take a minute here to let you know about something related to the community center. So as you know, the community center will be on the ballot this November. And one of the things that we are hashing out at the current time is what will the question be? That's a really important thing to get right, because depending on how you phrase the question, which includes the dollar value of the project, you can influence public opinion one way or the other. And you want to be very honest, open, transparent, et cetera. Infrastructure plays a large part in that. The Shops at Cottage View is the proposed location for the community center proposal, And one of the things that is challenging about that location is there isn't any underground infrastructure. Well, it just so happens that the federal government accepted a couple of proposals from the city of Cottage Grove recently for some infrastructure funding that will go before Congress, hopefully be voted upon here and, get some sort of a response within the next few months. And one of the proposals that we submitted that was accepted is a proposal for, Zach, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's close to $8 million for infrastructure for the shops at Cottage View, which would include underground pipes and wires and all the fun things that we need to have in place in order to spur development on that site. The reason that proposal was accepted is because even though the community center is a concept and may or may not get passed by the voters of Cottage Grove, that infrastructure would still serve a very valuable purpose for development on that site. So it's a good program, it's a good project either way. We also submitted a proposal for 80th Street to finish up the reconstruction of 80th Street or a portion thereof, and we've not heard back on that proposal yet. But we do know that our federal representative, Angie Craig, got the proposal for the shops at Cottage View in the bill. And then, of course, as always, I'll open it up to you. Do you have any questions for me about what might be going on?
What do you see as the next step towards this Mississippi Dunes?
What do I see as a next step?
Yeah.
Well, you have to remember that I'm 1/5 of the vote, so I'm 20%, but I have been working on this with Friends of the Mississippi since last year. I actually got a phone call from our former Senator, Katie Sieben, asking me to reach out to Whitney and talk through what we might be able to accomplish in partnership with some of these other agencies that were mentioned earlier. We've done some work behind the scenes. Zach's been a huge part of that, and I know what his goals and objectives are. The city council set a very clear vision for that property, which we have communicated to the property owner. And as I said during the conversation about the park's proposals that you reviewed, we've gotten some drawings from Pulte that we looked at and rejected immediately because they weren't anywhere close to the vision that we have for that property, and we're gonna stay firm to that vision. I think the next step will be to take your feedback from this evening to the city council, which I'm sure Zach will encapsulate and send out in our Friday update this week. And then my guess would be we would have a workshop to discuss all of the various options available to us as a municipality and how best to move forward. And that might be any number of things. It could be trying to engage in partnership with the DNR a little bit more, with Washington County a little bit more, et cetera. The hard part is when you're dealing with public entities, and Mike, you know this, the budget is everything. The budget is the guiding document. And so it's easy to get people to say, hey, yeah, we're interested in that. Let's do that. Oh, how much is that going to cost? Oh, yeah, that's not in the budget. That's where the challenge comes in. So I think there's going to be quite a bit of work to do around how we determine a value on that property. If the DNR wants to do another appraisal, when can that be done? How long will it take? I think there's still a lot of boxes to check, but probably starts with a very robust dialogue by the council with staff in a workshop, I would guess. But Zach will actually guide that process as our park director.
Is a workshop like that open to the public?
Sometimes they're open and sometimes they're closed. When they're closed to the public, it's because there is dialogue around various legal options that our attorney will want to present to us. But I would suspect it would be open to the public unless we get to a point where we say, okay, we're getting into some deep water here with regard to our authority as a municipality and how that syncs up with the desire on the part of, the property owner and all these other various entities. And then we might need to discuss legally what is our purview and what isn't our purview. But if we got to that point, we would probably have a closed workshop to get legal advice. But in terms of just having a robust dialogue about, our vision and how to hopefully realize our vision, that would generally be open to the public.
Is there a potential for the state and county to partner with some of these private entities to?
Yeah, there's potential for anything.
Okay, so it's not.
The
off
problem
table.
is, a lot of people have expressed interest thus far.
Right,
I
that
think I
means
told you,
nothing until you
we
see
had
the
a Zoom
dollars.
call last fall, and we had a number of different parties on there. And, people say they want to do something, but do they actually come to the table with, cold hard cash and a plan, and is somebody going to be in charge of that, and how do we move forward? The devil's always in the details.
Yeah.
Does that answer your question, Mike?
Yep.
Okay.
It's going to be a mess. I was just wondering what.
It's going to be a lot of work, but you know
Untangle
what?
this messes.
But it's important work. It
Oh,
really
without a
is.
doubt, without a doubt.
And it's work we've been doing for quite some time already.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Thank you.
Thank you.
Question.
Whoop.
I'm just slow. Are most council members, do you think, are like on the same page as you
With,
with regards to Mississippi dunes? Or, do council members think we need more land, like we want to pursue it type thing, or?
I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth, but what I will tell you is that as a council, when we had our strategic planning workshop in January, Zach challenged us to give him very clear direction on our vision for that property. And we were unanimous in our vision. And when the developer came to us with his proposal, the developer, by the way, his name is Del Webb, and he's done a lot of developments in the area, including many in Woodbury. And the development proposal that he's looking at is a more high-end, almost gated community sort of feel for that area. And we unanimously rejected that proposal. We sent it back to the developer and said, no, this is not what we want. The developer asked for a meeting with the city council to be able to discuss why we sent it back to him. And we told the staff that there was no need to have that meeting because we have been crystal clear in our vision for the property. So what you'll find is with developers and property owners and folks who come to the city with these different ideas is that sometimes they'll just sort of present something that they want to see if you'll bite on it or not. It's kind of like fishing, right? There's nothing wrong with throwing your bait in the water. But, again, we've been very clear. So I would like to think that the vision is unanimous and that everybody sort of looks at it the same way. Our city council works really well together, and we're very good about kind of debating things and presenting a united front to the public when the time comes. So, there may be some varying degrees of what we want to do and how we want to do it, but ultimately, I think the big picture vision is pretty unanimous.
All right.
Anybody else who's slow? No? Okay, thanks.
All right, if that, adjournment, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion. Do you see how fast that was, Justin?
Do I have a second, please? Do I have a second? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Meeting adjourned. Thank you. Good.